All right, let's go ahead and get started, guys. 10:03 on the dot. Good morning, Josh Baptist here with Joe and Nate from SMC. We're so happy you could join us for the third part of this webinar series, third and final. As I was just talking about a few minutes ago, this is going to be centered on safety products and safety products alone. I think a lot of people understand that safety really is an important factor in the manufacturing environment, but with the collaborative robot, not many people understand that quite often there are still some safety products you need to employ in a typical collaborative robot working cell. So that being said, today we're going to go through some of the new and existing safety products both Omron and SMC have distributed for years. And basically the schedule for today is that I'm going to start and finish, and Nate and Joe are going to pick up in the middle to talk about SMC. So let's get this started. Hopefully you can all see my screen. All right, so just a very quick recap, guys. You are currently watching part 3, as I just mentioned. Part 1 and 2 are on YouTube. So if you would like to go back and review the 2 that we've already done, you're more than welcome to do that. The first one was about end effectors and grippers, things that you use on the front end of robot applications. You can see a lovely picture to the right-hand side there of one of SMC's new vacuum grippers. Part 2 was centered on what I call back-end products. Those are things like valve manifolds, vacuum generators, things that you would use for a pneumatic application, but aren't necessarily on the front end of the robot. So if you'd like to go back and watch those are up. As far as questions goes, guys, we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Feel free to type them in the little questions box on the right-hand side there, and we will answer them either on the fly or we will circle back to them at the very end. Today's agenda, we're going to do a quick intro about cobots. I know some of you may have been on the first 2 calls, so we're just going to go through it very quickly, and then we're going to introduce Joe and Nate, as I mentioned. They're going to focus on the SMC-related products. Then I'm going to dive into a quick overview of Omron safety, and if there's time, we're going to review Pearse Bertram in general again. All right, so for any newbies who may be on the call, what is a collaborative robot? A collaborative robot is a robot designed for a manufacturing environment, and it's designed to work in close proximity of humans and other machines. And what I mean by that is there's actually torque sensors in each of the joints that will torque out, throw an error if an impact is made. So in theory, they're much safer to work around, whereas older style industrial robots, they kind of work without any premonition about where they are, and quite often they would cause harmful or potentially harmful impacts. They're designed to be extremely easy to program. Most of them have a graphical programming interface nowadays. They're designed to be low cost, and they're teachable, which means you can actually press a release button, move the robot around, it will record the motions it makes, and then you can go back and play those motions without having to do any programming whatsoever. So it's teachable in the essence that you can show it what to do, and then it will do it without any programming needed. Applications, any 6-axis application is on the table here: machine tending, soldering, packaging, etc. Anything where you might use a human arm. Are they safe? Okay, so one of the biggest misconceptions in the manufacturing environment today is that collaborative robots are safe right out of the box. You don't need to do anything to them. You can just throw them on your manufacturing floor. You can use them however you'd like, and they meet an OSHA standard. That is not true, okay? There are certain situations where collaborative robots can actually be dangerous, and you have to use safety equipment to make them OSHA compliant. So, you know, when you get a collaborative robot, you might be all excited about it, throw it on your manufacturing floor, walk away from it. But I'm here telling you today that you do need to evaluate the application and understand the safety risks before you just walk away and call it good. You can actually get fined by OSHA if they do an audit and they see a collaborative robot operating in a dangerous way. For example, there at the end, robots operating above the shoulders, overly fast, or with overly pointy objects often have to be guarded in some other way. And we'll get into that towards the end of the presentation. All right, so we represent as Pearse Bertram the Omron Techline line. There's 4 sizes, what I call desktop size. They're meant to be mounted on a table, on the wall, on the ceiling. They're not meant to be on the floor picking heavy loads. The max payload is about 30 pounds. One thing unique to the Omron line is they have a 3D landmark and calibration feature. So they can, on the fly, take a picture of that 3D landmark feature you see there on the right-hand side. And by taking a picture of that, the robot will know where in three-dimensional space it is. So it's a great feature to prevent possible manufacturing mishaps if somebody bumps something or moves something, or maybe you have two different machines that you'd like the robot to work with. You could roll the robot up to one machine or the other, and by taking a picture of that landmark feature, it will know where it is in relation to that machine. Built-in vision and autofocus with lighting as well. 35 to 45,000 with Omron. That includes almost everything you need to get started right out of the box, including the pendant, the controller, a landmark feature, cables, etc. And so, that being said, what else do you need? And that's what we're going to get in today with the safety products. One last thing I do want to mention, this is a new picture I just added to the presentation. This has to do with how you perform initial setup with programming. And this does a great job of showing how easy and how straightforward the collaborative robot graphical-based programming is these days. You can see in this situation, you simply click the potential hazards, whether it's the head, the neck, the legs, and the robot will automatically adjust its speed and torque settings to comply with the ISO standard for safety. That's how easy they make it nowadays. That being said, I am going to hand the presentation over to Joe and Nate. Joe and Nate are both extremely intelligent and experienced applications engineers with SMC. They represent the manufacturer, so they are extremely knowledgeable about everything SMC, and they're going to talk about some of these newer safety products that have been released. They're great to work with, great to answer questions with. So that being said, I will hand the presentation over to them.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Yep.
I assume you can see me. I've got and you can hear me okay. You'll let me know if something isn't showing up right. Okay, go back to my presentation here. Apologies. See that okay, Josh?
Yes, we can. Fire away.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to start talking about our residual pressure relief valves, our VP series, and included in that is the VG series on the large sizes as well. Essentially, what the VP series is a modular air or supply valve with position detection, and it is available in satisfy OSHA requirements for the 13849. So in the situation where you need to supply air to the Cobot or any of the tooling on the end of arm tooling of the Cobot, it's important to incorporate an OSHA approved supply valve for that function. You can see these units are in different configurations, and I'll get into a little bit of the details of these configurations, the X536, 538, 555. Essentially, that refers to the different levels of safety involved in the unit, but the most important component of this is that the safety limit switch is incorporated directly into the supply valve. And here I show the connection directly from the main valve via a mechanical rod connection to the safety limit switch. The safety limit switch is available in Omron, of course, or in Allen Bradley, and that ties back to your safety PLC to help regulate the system as a whole. Got a very long service life, and of course the has a solid mechanical return spring, so that when an e-stop is hit or any indication of interference with the cobot, you can drop the air supply and therefore have a safe condition going forward by dumping that. Categories 3 and 4 are for different levels of safety, and that is where you see what appears to be redundant valves. They actually are in series, and again, to satisfy OSHA requirements. The red safety limit, as you see, is Rockwell. The black, of course, is Omron, but both have the same function. On the X538 is a category 4, and it has the 2 supply valves in tandem, so that if one fails for any reason, the safety limit switch senses that and sends an output signal to the safety PLC. The pressure, the secondary valve will continue to function until the next cycle, and of course gives you the opportunity to correct that situation and move on. The soft start function on the X555 has the same function in the solenoid valves, but it adds a soft start startup valve, which is a mechanical, internally air piloted device, so that when you come back up to pressure, it does not have an inrush of air to create rapid movements, which could create an unsafe condition. The VG342 is the larger series. Basically, the VP series 544 and 744 get you up to ½ flow, and the VG342 takes you all the way up to 1 inch for larger machine, larger flow requirements. VG42 does not have an X555 or a soft start function as a standard option.
Hey, Joe.
Yep.
Can I ask you just a very quick question?
Sure.
So what front end products in a robot cell would those spool monitored valves typically be used for, or would they be used for the main supply type deal?
Typically, they used in the situation with a cobot, they'd be used with all the end of arm tooling. For instance, if you had grippers that were pneumatically operated, or any other components downstream on the robot, or secondary units inside guarding if the cobot is presenting to a secondary tooling operation. Again, so that it will relieve any pressure downstream, because again, pressure locked downstream is an energy source, so it has to be treated much the same way electrical power needs to be treated in D-stop condition. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, no, I think, many people will shut their machine down and just assume that when they shut down it's safe, but according to the OSHA standard, any stored electrical, hydraulic, or pneumatic energy would need to be released to be considered a safe condition. And obviously, when you monitor the actual position of the valve, you can understand where exactly or how exactly the valve is functioning and if it is malfunctioning. So that's a great point.
very good, and it's a good segue to move on to solenoid control valves downstream. Again, that may be on the robot, cobot, end of arm tooling, or on secondary tooling that it's presented to. In much the same way, we need to sense the position of the solenoids in some cases in order to sense the position of the actuator that the solenoid pneumatic valves are driving. So this series, SY 3000, 5000, 7000, basically are just different flow sizes. And the red that you see in this illustration, or this manifold of multiple valves, is an indication that these have position sensing or feedback of some type and to the safety PLC. A couple of accessory options thought we should include in this discussion. These are not safety valves, PLC connected per se, but these two functions can be applicable and can be useful tools in the overall safety scheme. One is the back pressure check valve. And essentially, this is either built into the valve and specified at the time of order, in which case this has back pressure check seals internal on the valve. In the other case, it's a retrofit. So if you find that essentially you're having issues with back pressure, which I'll explain in a minute, the retrofit type can be added after the fact. So essentially, in either case, the function of the back pressure check valve is if you have a manifold valve such as got illustrated here, and a valve adjacent to the small valve that's or valve that's actuating a small device, such as a gripper, if the valve adjacent to it is a high consumer of air, and that valve cycles, the exhaust flow can affect the small device, basically making a gripper or a small actuator jump. So the back pressure check valve essentially isolates the high flow unit exhaust from the other unit, so you're not affected the neighboring actuator. The residual pressure release valve below is a little different device. Essentially what that does is allow you to operate a manually relieve pressure. Again, that's trapped energy downstream of a closed center valve. So in the illustration here, we show that we've got a 3-position double solenoid closed center valve. And essentially when you hit E-stop, such as you would with the previous slide with the ISO 13849 valve, you do have trapped air downstream if you're using a closed center for any reason. For instance, you might use a rodless cylinder or a rod type cylinder or a gripper or whatever, and essentially you want it to stay in that position under normal circumstances, even when you dump air. However, that does create an unsafe condition as far as OSHA is concerned. So this allows you to go in and manually relieve that pressure with these indicators and push buttons downstream of the trapped air, downstream of the control valve. Some other options that, again, can be relative to safety is this supply stop spacer. Essentially what this does is the valve above it, again, operates normally. And if you've got a critical operation such as a pharmaceutical or any manufacturing where it's critical that the valve operation or the manifold operation as a whole keeps functioning. If you have an individual valve that fails for whatever reason while the machine is running, you can isolate that valve, turn off valve supply or pressure supply to that particular valve with this manual override function, and remove that valve and replace it while the machine continues to function. Again, this could be pertinent to Cobot operation and other manufacturing where continuous manufacturing is paramount. Now we get into the devices that are more directly safety related and safety position monitoring of the spool itself. Essentially, again, the red cap on the solenoid indicates that this is a safety-related valve. And in this particular case with the X31, we also have the red base or manifold configuration. So this indicates that we've got essentially position sensing. We're sensing the physical position of the spool, much like the ISO 13849 supply valves we looked at earlier. Again, this can be on an individual valve within a manifold for critical operations, so that other valves on the manifold may be inside guarding or outside an area where there could be interference, or this could be an entire manifold constructed of these safety valves, safety-rated valves. Another variation is, again, with pressure detection. Rather than physically sensing the position of the spool, we are sensing pressure within the manifold or within that station of the manifold. So that if we have the pressure in that station and it's critical to continuous operation, there is an output method that satisfies ISO 13849-2 validation and allows you to continuously operate while monitoring that pressure.
Hey, Joe?
Yep.
Just very quick question. So if you're using devices that don't necessarily need to be safety monitored, can you mix and match safety valves with your standard SY product? Like, could I mix standard SY valves and manifold slices with these products, or are they designed to be one or the other?
No, you can absolutely mix within a manifold, and that's actually pretty typical. Nate will talk about zone valves, manifolds, a little bit later, and that will show some illustrations of that very function.
Great, great.
This is another variation, the X74 option. And again, you'll notice that we jump back and forth. This happens to be mostly based on the SY series of flagship series valves, but we do have these in other series manifold configurations as well. But this typically has the most advanced features, safety-related features. The X74 has an M8 connector on the pilot valve rather than being connected through the base, so that this M8 connector, this solenoid in particular, can be directly connected to inputs on the safety PLC, again, so that it can be more directly connected to a safety circuit. And just as Josh talked about, this unit can be on a manifold with standard valves, not connected to the safety PLC necessarily.
Hey, Joe, can I add one quick thought before you continue? Sorry.
Sure.
So I just want to take a quick moment and talk about why you might use a pilot operated valve versus a not pilot operated valve or an internally piloted operated valve. So many people, especially people who are new to the industry, don't understand that these valves will actually use a little bit of pressure from the fluid stream to move the spool back and forth to actually actuate the valve. If you run into an application where your PSI is extremely low, like let's say you're operating a cylinder at 5 PSI or something like that, there may not be enough power in the fluid stream to actually actuate the valve. So if that's the case, you can go to an externally piloted valve, which means your 5 PSI will run through the main body of the valve and operate your cylinder, but there's a separate port for up to, I believe, 90 PSI, where you can actually put higher pressure to actuate the spool as would be required. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Does that make sense, Joe? Did I describe that properly?
Yep, very good job. And again, good segue for this particular slide. This shows another example with a double solenoid valve with a detent. And the reason that the detent is important for safety applications, even though this doesn't have a safety red on it, essentially is this X25 option has a mechanical detent. So in a two-position valve, their momentary contact on the solenoids indicated here by 14 and 12. This box with a slanted line is your solenoid. And the triangle here is the internal pilot supply. As Josh mentioned, you can isolate this pilot sections on both ends in the case of a two-position or single solenoid as well, and operate the pilot valves shown here under the blue cover independent of the main valve. So the main valve can operate down to low pressures or down to, in fact, vacuum, and operate the pilot valves effectively, shifting the main spool back and forth. The illustration or schematic on the right shows an externally piloted version with the same internal mechanical function and physical detent on the spool. These units have a little bit higher shifting forces required and therefore a little bit higher minimum operating pressure, whether it's internally piloted, as illustrated here on the left, or externally piloted, as illustrated on the right, to overcome that detent, or in the case of single solenoid valves, shown on the next slide, we need likewise a little bit higher operating pressure to overcome, to move the main spool, because we have a mechanical spring return. In some cases, in order to keep the size of the valve small, in center, like 10-inch centers on the standard SY3000, 15 millimeter centers in the case of the SY5000, we'll use an air spring return. You'll notice that this unit, this particular illustration shows solenoid air to move the main spool, center section here, and air mechanical spring combination to return the spool. So again, in the case of safety rated valves, essentially we have a stronger mechanical spring, therefore a higher minimum operating pressure to the pilot section to shift the main spool. So again, it's just another safety related specification that qualifies this for ISO 13849 certification. Again, in this case, single solenoid on the right-hand side here, but with the external pilot supply. And this gives you a little bit of a more detail on what I've just been discussing. The mechanical spring on the right here, and this is a X350 is the most basic of the mechanical spring return. Again, on the SY3000, where it's such a small spool, air return is typical as standard, because that allows us for higher flow and lower shifting force in the main spool area here. But in the case where you need mechanical spring return, you absolutely must make sure that the cylinder has a home position. We've got the built-in mechanical spring to ensure that that happens. But you do, the sacrifice there is that you have a higher minimum operating pressure, or you have to operate on an external pilot supply. Now I'm going to hand this over to Nate, and he's going to start talking about some of the other options that we have available.
Great, thanks, Joe.
All right, good morning, everybody. How does my webcam look? Do I look good? Can you see me?
Looks great.
Right. Again, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Josh. My name is Nate Kogish, LBA. I'm an application specialist here at SMC. I work along with Joe on supporting applications here for a multitude of our products. So to continue along, I'm going to stick with the theme of valves that Joe started with and talk more about some of the manifold options that we have available for safety. But before I get started on that, I wanted to come back to Josh's question about mixing and matching safety SY valves together with standard SY valves. So on this screen, actually, we can see that from this picture. You can actually do that very easily. Plug-in style SY valve series is very accommodating towards mixing and matching a variety of different products together. So in this situation, we have a couple of valves here with spool detection on them, in addition, side by side with standard SY valves. So if you're designing these manifolds, you don't necessarily have to have all of the valves be safety oriented or safety related. You can mix and match very easily. So with respect to manifolds, Joe's done a great job of detailing some of the valve products that we offer for safety. However, there are some additional manifold options that you can get in tandem with or separate from safety valves themselves. One of these is power blocks. So let me just kind of explain the situation here. So with a standard plug-in style manifold, there is a common electrical connection for power to all of the valves in a typical configuration. However, when you're designing a safety circuit, sometimes there's the need to segment or zone out the separate or the individual power connections to valve stations. This might be a situation where you want to turn off power to some valves, but maintain power to the remainder of the valves in the system. In a standard manifold configuration, that's not possible. However, we do have some zone output products that allow you to do just that. So basically, that's what these zone switch off power blocks are for. These EX9-PE1 products allow you to segment power on a standard manifold. Regardless of the electrical interface that you have for it, you will still have a common power connector to this. In this case, it's our EX260 product, but this could be an EX600. This could potentially be a D-sub connector or some other kind of electrical connection. But then we insert these power blocks that allow you to segment power to the manifold. You don't need to segment power to all of the individual valves on here. You might just want to segment a few of the valves. So basically, based on the X option that we call out at the end of this part number, provides you with valve stations, essentially, that you'd be able to in the power zone. For this first group, which would be the X15 option, it would be the first 4 valves. The X22 option would be the next 4 valves after that, so on and so forth. And it basically allows you to segment power up to a total of 32 individual solenoids on a the way these work is it's actually so you're grouping them in 4s, but then within that group of 4, there's a subset of 2 stations each. So each power block, sorry, my screen, every time I move my mouse, the screen moves forward. So each power block has the ability to be segmented again, divided in half, so you can segment with each power block 2 individual valve stations. So you can turn on and off power to these valve stations independent of all of these other valve stations on the manifold. So it gives you more flexibility and control to the event of a safety circuit getting tripped, turning off power to some valves, but not necessarily needing to shut the whole manifold. Maybe systems that need to stay active and live while the other systems are turned off quickly. This product would allow you to do that safely without any issues. Another manifold option that we have for our SY valve series, as well as some of our other valve series products, is this safety over safety over fieldbus. So we have a variety of fieldbus options for our valve banks through a variety of different products like our EX260 and EX600 products. A lot of customers are switching towards safety fieldbus protocols for safety circuits, which is separate from the production systems. It's more designed for controlling safe systems. In that case, we do offer a product which is called our EX245 product. It allows us to do safety through the ProfiSafe fieldbus protocol, which is a safety network fieldbus protocol that was designed by Siemens. So it's a little bit different product than some of our other fieldbus offerings, but it's designed specifically for the ProfiSafe, and it allows you to not only control valves here, which is we've got our valves here, but we can also tie in I/O from other sensors, but pressure sensors, flow sensors, all of that can be tied into this and have one common ProfiSafe interface for all of that, all of those. So this is an overview. We do actually have a mini panel of this product. So if there's some interest in taking a look at this at some point, we can certainly look into show it. The previous slide showed our SY plug-in SY valve series. This is showing another valve series that we offer with this platform that allows you to do that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is our SD product line. But we have several different valve series that we use this platform. Moving on to some additional products at this point. One of the first valves or products that a lot of customers think of when they think about safety is a shutoff valve. We do have a full line of shutoff valves through our VHS series that conform with OSHA standards. They are lockout, tagout valves, meaning that you can shut off an airline and you can lock it so that the airline can't be turned back on in the event of a safety event. Air can be totally dumped from or turned off to a system so the supply air won't be coming in there. Then after relieving the downstream pressure, operators can go in and safely fix the equipment that may have become damaged as a result of the safety event, or clear an obstruction if that's the case. Normally we see these installed on air preparation assemblies like this picture shows, but there are a variety of different applications for these products as well. Another product that we offer is this KE residual pressure relief valve. And basically what this does, it's installed inline in an air system. And it allows us to, through the use of this manual button, in this case it's a push button, in this case it's a turn button, we're actually able to relieve downstream pressure. So sometimes we use that lockout tagout valve to shut off the power or the supply coming into the line, but we still have trapped air or stored energy in the lines through the valving as well as in the actuators themselves. These products allow you to relieve that pressure so that you can eliminate that stored energy or stored air, and then the actuators would be safe for the operator to go in and clear the issue that tripped the safety event. Kind of a similar product to that is this pilot operated check valve with, again, the residual pressure release venting option on it. So these normally would be installed right on an actuator. They're pilot operated, meaning that you need to supply air to this in order to release the check valve and allow the cylinder to actuate. Once you relieve that or you turn that pilot air signal off, the actuator can't move. When that occurs, there's stored air, stored energy inside the cylinder still that needs to be vented. So this allows you to vent that air, that stored energy air right in the cylinder. We also do offer another pilot-operated check valve that has a spool detection option. So this picture doesn't really show the whole wire, but this wire here would actually be connected to the top of this valve. And basically what this does is it allows us to sense the position on this pilot-operated check valve. So we're not necessarily relying on the operation of the cylinder to let us know whether or not this is actually engaged. We actually have an electrical signal coming directly from the valve that lets us know that this valve has engaged, and it's a it's a safe. The valve is working properly, and it's safe for the operator to potentially issue in regards to the safety event. Again, these are installed directly on the cylinder to allow the cylinder to move.
Hey, Nate.
Yes.
Could those in theory be installed directly on some of your two-finger gripper products as well?
They could, absolutely. So these can be installed on any of our gripper products potentially, and this would again help with the designing safe systems so that you have a little bit more flexibility and control over the actual operation of the gripper products themselves. And then the final product that I wanted to talk about today is this VR31 visual display unit. So essentially what this is just a display unit. It's really a passive product here. It's used to, you install this in lines to provide a visual display of whether or not pressure is present in that system. So you could potentially use this in tandem with some of the other products that we've talked about to detect whether there's residual pressure still present within an airline. And then you can use one of those KE inline residual pressure release valves to release that stored energy or that stored air. It's a visual indicator that allows us to see whether or not pressure is existent in the airline. So in addition to all of these products that we've talked about so far, and most of it has been focused predominantly on valves, we do have a variety of other products that could potentially be used in designing safety circuits and safety systems. These include, but aren't limited to, locking cylinders, pilot-operated check valves, which we've talked a little bit about, pneumatic logic and/or valves, shuttle valves, things like that. We do have a full line of pressure sensors, which we kind of talked about a little bit in our last presentation. Auto switches. We have automatic slow start or soft start valves. Joe touched a little bit on the soft start valve that can be incorporated into our VP safety valves, but we do also have standalone soft start valves that can be used to slowly charge up a system so that actuators don't jump and immediately start actuating full force at startup. There's a slow startup time so that the actuator comes up to full speed slowly. We have a full line of silencers and exhaust cleaners, variety of mechanical valves. The VHS valve is a mechanical valve. It's a 2-port mechanical valve, but we do have a variety of other product offerings, 3-port, 5-port configurations for a variety of different applications with different types of push buttons for applications requiring manual valves where you want to have manual control of the valve. We do also have 2-hand tie-down valves that can be used in tandem with those mechanical valves, where you have to press both valves, or the operators on both valves, in order to allow an actuator to actuate. We also have electronic flow control valves as well as electropneumatic regulators. Just a few additional products that we could talk about, but there are a whole line of other products that could be used with respect to designing safe systems around the whole cobot industrial robot environment. And at this point, I will turn it back over to Josh, who's going to talk about some Omron products that are related to this, and I will let Josh take it away.
Great, thanks, Nate. Okay. All right, everyone. I am back. Let's see here. Hopefully you can all. Can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. All right. So I am going to take a few moments just to round out the presentation. I'm going to talk about some of the safety related products that I commonly see being used with collaborative robots or industrial robots in general, just for those of you who might be actually installing a robot cell. One of the most common safety products I see being used is a Omron OS32C laser scanner. This is a very unique product in that it throws a plane of light in a 270-degree shape, and that plane of light can be used to detect objects, humans, machines, whatever it may be in that zone. Up to 4 meters as a safety zone, but 15-meter detection distance. So in theory, if anyone or anything enters that zone, it will throw a fault. It can be mounted in any direction, so you can actually have these things pointing down at a diagonal, vertically. Typically, they're mounted horizontally, kind of at shin level, just to detect people walking around the robot. But it can be used in any direction. And like I said, 270 degrees, so it can't see directly behind it, but it can see in a pretty good wide-angle view. Objects and people, in theory, can be muted. So if there are specific areas where you don't want a fault to be thrown, you can actually program this thing with free software to make sure that it's not tripping out in a false way. And obviously, because it is throwing light from a central source, it can't see behind objects. So if there are objects behind objects that are moving, it might not see that. There might be a blind spot. One common thing you see is a table with legs that are muted, but because of the way that the light fans out, it starts out with a 1-inch blind spot that kind of fans out to more like a 1-foot blind spot as the light kind of disperses. So that's something to keep in mind. The way these operate is there's a small mirror inside the laser, LiDAR, and the mirror will rotate infinitely around continuously, throwing light in that beam shape you see there on the bottom right. The reason why, oops, sorry guys, let me go back here. The reason why these are used most commonly is because the robot itself can be operated at what they call full speed mode when there's no humans around. So if there's no one around to impact the robot or no object around to impact the robot can improve its throughput by flying through the operation at full speed. But the moment that a human being or an object enters the zone, the robot on the fly will slow down to what they call collaborative mode, which matches the ISO spec. And then if someone leaves the zone, it will speed back up to full speed mode. So it's a great way to improve your throughput with the robot and actually use it more like an industrial traditional style robot while also maintaining that safety level. About $3,500, and they come with various mounting brackets, cable lengths, etc. So you can really mount them however you'd like. Another great technology that Omron just released and is continuing to improve on a regular basis is what they call SIP safety. In yesteryear, in the olden days, the way to do safety was with safety relays, force guided relays, that type of thing. And what people started asking for was a smarter way of doing things over a protocol, right? So, you know, in theory, if you have more than 3 safety devices, more than 3 safety relays, it actually makes more economical sense to go with what they call a safety PLC. That's the common term for it. It's not technically a safety PLC, but that's more or less what people refer to it as. And so SIP safety is what it stands for, is Common Industrial Protocol. And basically what it is a standard protocol that many different manufacturers use, including many different cobot manufacturers, that will allow you to integrate safety over a network. And you can see there that Omron does offer both standalone units and what they call integrated units. So if you have an Omron PLC, you can add slices of safety IO to it like you do with standard IO. and you can communicate with those devices over a network, and it will be up to OSHA spec. If you don't have an Omron PLC, if you just have the robot controller, or maybe you're using Siemens or Allen Bradley or something like that, you can actually use a standalone unit from Omron, and it will talk over the same common protocol and recognize the safety products, be allowed to work over the ISO spec, and you know, basically keep your employees safe. Let's see. So the Omron product, up to 256 inputs and outputs, which is huge. I've never seen a machine that's used that many. And let's see, what else did I want to mention? That is pretty much it. That is SIP safety.
Hey, Josh, just a quick tie-in here,
Yep.
if I can. So CIP is one of the protocols that we are actively looking at for integrating our products with to make them tie into this whole platform. So it is definitely one of the top protocols, that's the safety protocols that we are considering for a lot of the products that we've already talked about here today.
Great. Great. Yeah, no, I feel like many manufacturers are getting on board with it. You know, back in the day, it was like maybe you had a Siemens, maybe you had an Allen Bradley, maybe you had an Omron, and nothing really played nice with each other. And so if you are an integrator or a person on the manufacturing floor, maybe you have a collaborative robot you're trying to install, it was very choppy. But now all the manufacturers seem to be moving towards this CIP safety protocol, what they call SIP safety. So it's great to see that you can kind of mix and match. Most of the cobots on the market today will already have this embedded in their software offering. So,
and just a general clarification on that, I mentioned it before, but this is not a replacement for traditional industrial fieldbus protocols. This is in addition to it, specifically
correct.
for safety equipment. It does not replace like an Ethernet IP network or a Profinet network. It is a separate side-by-side system that is designed specifically for safety equipment and safety control.
Correct. So if you're using DeviceNet or Ethernet IP or Profibus or something like that, SIP safety works in the background, or like Nate said, in conjunction, specifically for the safety pieces of your design. Light curtains. Everybody is familiar with light curtains. Basically, they throw a beam of light between a receiver and a transmitter. If that beam of light is broken, it will stop the machine, or it will slow the machine down to collaborative mode in the example of a collaborative robot. They come in various sizes. They come in various resolutions. In other words, you can either detect fingers, hands, arms, whole bodies. Everyone is familiar with them. They're commonly used in robot cell applications, but what you're not familiar with is the new series that Omron just released, which I'm very excited about. It's the F3SG SR and PG series. PG stands for perimeter guarding. And basically the idea with this new series is to reduce installation time and installation headaches. And what I mean by that is there's a set of very specific features that are on these light curtains that weren't on the light curtains of yesteryear that will allow you as a person who's installing these things to do it much more easily. And you know, if you're unfamiliar with light curtains in general, it'll make the learning curve a lot easier to bear. Sorry, let me just jump back. That jumped ahead on me. Okay. So the two features I'll mention is the tricolor alignment. So in the past, it's been kind of a pain to align these things to make sure that they're communicating properly between each other. There is a tricolor LED embedded on either side of these things that will actually guide you and show you what you're misaligned on. So it makes it very easy visually to understand what you need to do to get these properly aligned. They feature what they call an intelligent tap. There's an actual device that kind of looks like a USB stick where you can plug into your light curtain. Whatever settings you have will be downloaded to the USB stick. And then whether or not you're installing similar light curtains across your factory, or maybe one of your light curtains has died and you're trying to replace it, the bottom line is that program will be stored on that USB stick. So all you literally have to do is just plug into your new set of light curtains wherever they are, and boom, you'll be up and running. You don't have to do any programming. In the past, you would have to do the program here, then here, then here, then here. So this saves a ton of time. Again, just really trying to increase the offering here so that you have the ultimate flexibility and setup. up to 30 meters apart. Both finger are all included is the finger, arm, body, hand protection resolution. So everything is about the Internet of Things nowadays, right? Omron and SMC, all the modern manufacturers are really moving towards what they call the IoT of things, which basically allows you to communicate with more information with your peripheral devices. So if something breaks on this unit, it will actually communicate that back to your PLC, and an LED on the unit will show you which laser has malfunctioned, so it's very easy to identify for replacement. And there's just a slew of other information you can get from it, including the output status, the muting input status, and so on and so forth. So again, with the Internet of Things, it's really moving towards getting more information from your peripheral devices so you can operate with less downtime and understand the efficiency of your devices. This is an example of a typical robot setup, and you can see here that the light curtains are actually being used with mirrors. So in this case, we're protecting 4 sides of a robot cell, and we don't necessarily need to have 4 sets of light curtains. You can have 1 set of light curtains with 3 mirrors or 2 mirrors on the corners, and you can actually guard the entire cell with reduced hardware. Moving along. We do get into frame world hard guarding here at Pearse Bertram as well. So if you do need to provide fencing, we do have that in various colors, shapes, sizes, attachments, and so on. Frame World is great. They're a Midwest company. They operate in the inch size, which is very similar to 80/20. But the one thing I will say is their cost is much better, and they have no grooves. One thing about 80/20 that everyone I'm sure here is familiar with is they have grooves. Those grooves are purely aesthetic, and they capture dust. They make it harder to clean. Frame World has no grooves. There's no reason for them. Door switches. So with robot cells, you often need to understand from a safety standpoint when a door is open, when a door is closed, who may be in the cell. You can't be up and running if you have someone in your robot cell, right? So commonly you see door switches used to understand where the door actually is, and then you might see like a laser scanner or a light curtain in the cell to determine if anyone is still in the area. They have both magnetic and what they call physical keyed door switches. So magnetic, there's no actual contact. There's a transmitter and a receiver. Basically, you put the magnet on the door, you put the switch itself on the frame. As the magnet gets close, there's no physical contact. It just feels the magnetic force and understands that the door is now closed. Locking keyed, so that is where you have an actual key. When you close the door, the key will go into the lock or into the switch, and there's a locking feature sometimes where you can actually lock the door closed with the input. So that's pretty convenient for those of you who want to lock someone out of a cell. They also have hinged sensors, so you can put these on the hinges themselves. You don't need to have them on the frame or on the door, in the hinges themselves, so that way you can understand if the door is open or closed. One very common thing you see with robots, especially collaborative robots, are pendant controllers. These are little screens with buttons on them that people use to control the robot or interact with the robot or understand what's going on with the robot. Omron does offer pendant switches and what they call deadman switches that will work with a custom pendant controller. So if your company is designing a custom enclosure with a pendant on it, Omron does offer these safety switches that will basically determine whether or not someone is holding that pendant. If someone is holding the pendant, then the robot's allowed to operate. If they're not holding the pendant, then the robot is not allowed to operate. These are up to an ISO OSHA spec, so they're perfectly fantastic to use for safety applications with robots. They also have keyed switches where you can use keys, and they have two-hand capacitive switches, which are basically there's no mechanical operation involved in these switches. They're purely electrical, they're capacitive sensors, and you see them commonly with two-hand control. So there's basically 2 capacitive buttons that are placed next to the robot cell. You put your hands over them, just like the dryer thing in bathrooms you see often. It detects that your hand is there, and it will allow the robot to operate. And then, of course, they have a variety of emergency stop devices, including rope pulls and e-stops. E-stops are buttons that you push, and rope pulls are switches that incorporate a red rubber. It's not technically a rope. It looks like just a red rubber metal lanyard that goes around the entire cell. And if anyone actually pulls that, kind of like on a subway, when you pull the cord, stops the subway tram. You pull the cord, it will stop the machine. So it's a great way to kind of guard all the way around a cell without actually having to have e-stops everywhere. Alrighty. One last quick thing I did want to cover is the partnership between Pearse Bertram and SMC. A lot of people wonder why SMC utilizes distributors as part of their sales strategy, going to market strategy. And there's several fantastic reasons that they embrace the distributor model. So I'm going to go over that quickly here. Here at Pearse Bertram Plus, we are New England headquartered. We are in Bloomfield, Connecticut, so we're only a short drive away from Boston. One-stop shop for automation. We like to say that if you're using it in the factory, we have it. Pneumatics, hydraulics, robots, controls. We really try to offer a wide range of products for our customers so they can come to us with any of their needs and we can help them out. 33,000 square feet roughly, 43 employees. We are ISO and UL certified, so we take quality very seriously. And we do have sales engineers that cover the entire New England region. SMC, of course, has sales engineers that cover the globe that can come in and look at an application with you. And we do have a significant amount of SMC in stock. So if you need something on the shelf, get it quickly overnight. We can set up a program for you, or we can examine what we have and get it out to you quickly. So again, the question is why distributors, right? Like, what do they add to the equation? Well, the first thing is the power of distribution cuts lead times and improves customer service, right? So SMC, huge global corporation, they're great at manufacturing product. Maybe they're not necessarily as good at customer service. So that's where we come in. We can answer phones quickly. We get back through email quickly. We have technical sales engineers who can come on site and review your applications with you. We have a wide range of technologies that will complement the SMC product. And like I mentioned, we stock to make sure that you get what you need quickly. One last thing I'll mention. SMC, just like many other manufacturers, is quantity based. So when we buy in super large quantities. And what that allows us to do is get a great discount on an SMC product. And we can share those savings across the board with all our customers, no matter how many different SMC products you're ordering, because we get that quantity, we capture that quantity discount, if that makes sense. So our pricing is very competitive when you compare it to someone like an MSC or an Allied or something like that. Again, person-to-person solutions, free on-site technical support. We can cross over outdated part numbers. We can advise you on parts that you might need in your robot cell. We have the full backing of the manufacturer, and we offer turnkey manufacturing services as well. I'll go through that on the next slide. Talking about safety, so safety is huge here, and we do both formal and informal safety audits and recommendations. So if you run into a situation where you're not sure exactly what's going on with your robot cell or any machine in general, we can come in, preferably at the beginning of the design process, review the entire application with you, let you know what you need to be on the lookout for, and then we can review it at the end as well to determine how you comply or where there might be holes in your compliance. So if you need safety, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We can help you all along the process. It's always better to involve people at the beginning than at the end, because if you do something and you finish designing it and it's not safe, it can cost a lot more money to go back and change everything and fix everything than the investment up front. All right, so here at Pearse Bertram, we are a contract manufacturer. And what I mean by that is we add value to the products we sell. We can take SMC product and we can combine it with some of the other brands we represent to create a total turnkey solution for someone. That's assembly, that's testing, that's labeling, that's packaging. So if, for example, you have a robot cell and you need a control panel designed with various pneumatic, electrical, maybe even hydraulic components in it, we can come in, we can look at the application with you, we can create an electrical drawing for you, we can pick out the parts that will go into that panel, we can create the entire thing for you, and we can ship it to you just so you take it right off your dock, put it right in, and it's up and running without any setup time. Again, stocking, part number consolidation. Instead of ordering 10,000 parts, now you're just ordering one part, saves labor in terms of purchasing. We can do drawings, we can do design. We're ISO certified, like I mentioned. We have very experienced people on staff who can handle several different aspects of the manufacturing process. So if you have an assembly, maybe you're doing it in-house, or maybe you have an assembly that you're looking to do brand new, we're happy to look at doing that for you, remove some of the headaches of purchasing, of manufacturing, of stocking, of inspection, and make sure that you guys get what you need built correctly the first time. Here's some examples of some things we've done with SMC product. Here's an air prep panel we've done. You can see it involves various SMC filter products, including the VHS valve that we talked about today to dump pneumatic pressure from the circuit. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of a cooling manifold that we've done involving some SMC product with different flow meters and whatnot for a cooling process. In this case, the customer simply didn't have enough space in their factory to assemble something like this. Here's a manifold assembly showing some great SMC bank valves. Excuse me, you can see here that we are incorporating a galvanized sheet metal back panel. We have a network of machinists, anodizers, welders, things like that we use all the time. So even if you need something custom as part of your assembly, we can add that as well. And you can see on the right-hand side an example of a pneumatic electrical control panel where we're incorporating different brands to create a total solution. This is a blow-off panel we did for a customer, and in this case, they simply didn't have the labor. They didn't have enough employees on site who were experienced enough with this kind of stuff to create it. All righty. I appreciate you guys staying on. I know we've gone a few minutes past here, but I just want to say thank you so much for sticking with us. And I want to say a special thank you to those of you who were with us for the first two as well. This completes the SMC Pearse Bertram joint webinar series, all focused on collaborative robot technology. If you want more information, or if you actually want to play with some of these products, we do offer free tent shows. We can come on site, either inside or outside, and we can set up what they call mini panels, which are little demonstrations of the different products they represent. These are free, and there is a registration link there that you can absolutely click on. We will send this PowerPoint to you so you have it. We can do lunch. We can do it after work, whatever is convenient for you and your employees. You just let us know, and we will be there to make sure that they understand how the products work and they understand what SMC has to offer. Again, this will be sent to you. We will also post on our YouTube channel. Please don't hesitate to follow us on LinkedIn. We're posting new stuff all the time. Our YouTube channel is right there. And if you'd like to send me an email, please do. That being said, I want to thank you guys again. Josh Baptist, Sales and Marketing Manager for Pearse Bertram. I want to thank you guys very much for joining us. And I do want to say a special thank you to SMC, Joe and Nate. You guys were fantastic. I know you spent a lot of your own personal time working with us on this, so I can't say thank you enough. You know, we really value the partnership we've had with SMC for the past 10, 15 years roughly. And we only see that relationship continuing to grow as we come out of this COVID era and robotics continues to ramp up. So again, Joe, Nate, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your time. And I see we don't really have any questions, but if there's any questions that you guys might have after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Josh, for including us in this process. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate it. All right, everyone. Well, no questions. So unless there's a last minute person typing here. Nope. Okay. Well, again, if you have any questions, guys, feel free to reach out, and I will go ahead and end the series, and we are good. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.